this is division in year 4. The division we're showing is 844 divided by 4. Now, it's really important to emphasize when dividing, it's different to adding, subtracting and multiplying, because actually you start with your biggest place value instead of the smallest. So that's a change compared to the other 3 operations. As we're dividing by 4, you'll see we've made 4 groups here. And starting with our hundreds, we split our 800s into 4 groups. So in this case, there are 200s in each group. Moving on to our 4 tens, so again, we're dividing by 4 and therefore we're splitting our 4 tens into our 4 groups. And finally, our 4 ones, splitting those into 4 groups. So it's really visual here. You can see, we always say to them, right, look at one group now. What is 844 divided by 4? So it is 200s, 110 and 1 and therefore the answer is 211. So just really emphasising, we start with the biggest place value, and in this case, because we're dividing by 4, we've made 4 groups. So that would be the concrete side.
We also are sort of looking at the children's understanding of what they're doing as well, because they need to be able to spot that it is actually equal groups and that they have shared those hundreds fairly as well. So that's always quite good to look at as well.
Now here you can see it's the formal written method for division, but to help them out we've got the more pictorial aspect where they can draw their dots. So setting it out, we're doing 8 divided by 4, and therefore I've drawn out 8 dots and I've seen how many groups of 4 can I make, so therefore I can make 2 groups of 4. Here we're doing 5 divided by 4, so I've drawn out my 5 dots and I can see that I can make 1 group of 4, however I have 1 remaining and therefore we add it here. So this number, rather than becoming 6 divided by 4, it is 16 divided by 4. So just like when doing adding and subtracting, it's really important that you show this remaining dot or counter. So 16 divided by 4, again I've represented it here, and you can see that there are 4 groups. So therefore 856 divided by 4 is 214. And then just very similar, but this time without that pictorial aspects of drawing out the groups. So again, 8 divided by 4 is 2, 4 divided by 4 is 1, 4 divided by 4 is 1. Really emphasising that we're starting with that bigger place value and not with our ones. And then again, just the same calculation, 8 divided by 4 is 2, 5 divided by 4 is 1, so you can make 1 group of 4 with 1 dot remaining. And then 16 divided by 4 is 4. So that would be the formal written method for division.
You can see that if the children don't know their times tables, that's so much more difficult. But if they know their 4 times tables inside and out, and they know 4 times 4 is 16, they'll know 16 divided by 4 is 4. So they've got that inverse relationship between the multiplication and division. So times tables are just absolutely essential, aren't they, for division problems to be solved quickly.
Especially when you're then sort of looking at remainders as well and things like that, and they're trying to work out how many you've got left over.
Yeah.
So just as Mrs. Hindle was saying as well earlier, that you know, sometimes it is represented slightly differently, just that they see it a different way. This is a part whole model, and we've partitioned it. So the original question is 844 divided by 4. So they know how to partition 844. You divide each of them individually by 4, and again, really just what we were saying earlier about if they don't know 800 divided by 4, you could do 8 divided by 4 to sort of help you, but they get the answer, add them together to get 211, and then this is a little bit more of a challenge because if you have a number like this, 856 divided by 4, you can really see the children's understanding of place value here, because they know that a 4 can go into an 8 or an 800, but hopefully they would know that it can't go into a 5 fairly, so then they've got to think of, that's a 50, how can I partition 50 so that it's going to be, a 4 can go into each of those 2 numbers, if that makes sense. So what they've done is they've partitioned it into a 40 and a 16, which adds up to 56. As long as those two numbers add up to 56, and they could, you know, you can divide them by 4. You can, however they want to do it. And again, so 800 divided by 4, 200. 40 divided by 4, 10. 16 divided by 4, 4. They add it up, and then they'll put their answer at the end. And that's that.
So they come to year 5, obviously, having learned what the year 4 teachers have shown, but we would still rely on the...
Could you enlarge that a little bit, Mrs. Hinder, just for the screen?
Okay.
A bit more, yeah. Just move it over to the middle, that's it. Thank you.
Showing the pictorial method here. So we have the number 396 divided by 3. So I've got 396 shown with my place value counters, and then alongside it we have the formal method. So how many groups of 3 in 300s? We've got 1, and you can see it circled there, we have 1 group of 3. And we then have our 1 here. How many groups of 3 do we have in 9, in these 9 tens? I have 3 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3. My 3 goes there. And how many groups of 3 do I have in the 6 ones? I have 2 groups of 3. So that's a visual representation where they can then really see how they're grouping depending on what number they're dividing by. And then we have here the similar to what year 4 has shown, but when the children come to year 5, it will have been a little while since they've actually maybe done division as an actual topic. They will revisit it at the beginning of lessons, but for some children they may have forgotten, so we will go over the basics so that they are very secure before they move on. And again, we would use this where Miss Nolan showed we can draw the dot counters, draw the dots, and then they can group them. So I've got my 6, how many groups of 5 and 6? I'll draw my 6 and then I group them as 1 group, and I do again have a remainder, so my remainder goes here. Then I draw 11, I've got 2 groups of 5, and I have a remainder left, and then I draw, and there's my remainder here, and then I draw my 15, and how many groups of 5 in 15? And we would also encourage the children to then use their tables. So 5 goes into 15 how many times? So I'll say my 5 times tables, but this is showing it visually. And then here we're just showing dividing a 4-digit number by 4. Again, the exact same method, 1 group of 4 in 5, 3 groups of 4 in 12, and then so on until you get to your answer of 1,324. That's year 5. And then moving on to year 6, we will divide by 2-digit numbers. So I just wanted to show you, we at St. Monica's teach what we call the short division method. So even though we're dividing by a 2-digit number, we show the short division method. So if I just show you this example, so we're dividing by 13, and what we get the children to do first of all would be to write out the first 6 or 7 multiples of the divisor, of the number they're dividing by, because they will need this, they will need to refer to this as they, go through the question. So 13, how many groups of 13 and 7? We don't have any, so I have my 0 here. Then I'm asking myself, how many groups of 13 do I have in 74? And I look at the multiples that I've already written out. We will have shown the children that you want to go to the multiple that's just under this number here. So in this case, it's 65. So I will then go back and I count 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 groups. I have 5 groups of 17. So 5 times 13 will be my 65. And then I see what's the difference between 74 and 65. What's my remainder? And my remainder will be 9. Some children may find it difficult to count on or count back. So what we do encourage them to do is that they can just write out the little subtraction to help them, so that they can actually write it out as a subtraction, so that they will be able to work it out, and that they're not, relying solely on mental methods, that they can actually write it out. So I have my remainder of 9 here, and then I'm showing you ones without remainders at the very end. So how many groups of 13 and 91? And I go along and I see my 91 here, so I count 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 groups. And just to add to that, some children, they would be able to use their tables knowledge. So to start with, they might think, well, I can estimate, I think there's probably 5, maybe 6 groups of 13, and then they could do a calculation, a multiplication calculation at the side, where they can work out, well, am I right, am I close to the answer or not? But the multiples we do show, and it's really important because that's a skill in itself, that they show the multiples as repeated addition, because they wouldn't be tables that they would know. So they need to make sure. A problem that can arise is if they make a mistake in one of the multiples, so they haven't added correctly, then if they make a mistake on one of them, then the mistake will carry on through and they will continue to add 13 to a wrong number. So that's something to watch out for, that they don't make a mistake when they are writing out the multiples in the first place. And we do say to them, well, it's like, some of them would be easy to add mentally. 13 and 13 is 26. This one is easy, 26 out of 13. But then if it gets a little bit harder, we do say to them, well, just jot it down as an addition, so that you make sure that you're right, rather than, you know, trying to do it mentally and then perhaps getting the wrong answer. And as I said, making a mistake on the multiples, which then will lead to an incorrect answer here. And then we have, I've just shown this one, I mean, the multiples there are just written out that way, and here I've just shown them where they're written down this way. It really doesn't make any difference, but as long as they write them out and that they are accurate, that they have added to each number, whatever they're dividing by. Again, here 17 divided by 2,142 divided by 17. How many groups of 17 and 2? I don't have any. How many groups of 17 and 21? I have 1 group, and I have a remainder of 4. How many groups of 17 and 44? I'm going to I'm going to 34, because it's the number that's lower than this number here. So I've got 2 groups of 17, 2 lots of 17 is 34, with my remainder of 10. And then here I have 102. How many groups of 17 in 102? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups of 17 in 102. But again, just to point out that if you had a question that maybe would need you to get to the 9th multiple, then we would encourage the children to think, well, I know what 4 times the number is, so I could see what 8 times the number would be, and then to use their knowledge and to do a multiplication so that they can get to the multiple, the 9th multiple, without maybe necessarily having to write all of them out. So that is division in Year 6.